Good morning, everybody. We have a moderate risk that has been issued by the Storm Prediction Center, and this is for the threat of a long-lived windbag event. Looks like it's going to develop across southeastern Oklahoma. Clusters of supercells developing in that prefrontal confluence line. Eventually, the front's going to catch this thing, congeal into a massive squall line that's going to move through southeastern Oklahoma, southern Arkansas, eventually into northeastern Louisiana, and all the way into central southern Mississippi, probably passing into Alabama and Georgia. That's many states. 1, 2, you can count Texas into that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states with this expected long-lived squall line. And we are going to have to throw out the D word, derecho, for this event, as this thing is going to be moving off to the east, southeast, a long-lived wind event. This is going to be a very impactful severe weather event as it moves east-southeast along that instability axis. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has hoisted a moderate risk across that area, and that's where the threat of long-lived wind is expected. And there are going to be tornado vortices embedded within this line as well, enhancing those wind speeds locally. I'm also going to be watching the dry line for initiation of supercells, but it does look like that axis of the low-level jet is just going to be a little bit off to the east. This is a really weird ejection of the upper level pattern. You kind of have this unusual split flow just a little bit, and that's leading to a diffuse low-level jet that's going to increase, though, overnight tonight. And this is kind of also dominated by the northerly flow on the back side of it, which is going to force the squall line off to the east. But as that low-level jet increases this evening and through the overnight, that's going to create quite a bit of wind shear in the low levels and deep layer shear, of course, ahead of this squall line. And also moisture is going to be on the increase. There's a big plume of moisture, a big blob of CAPE, streamer of 0 to 3 kilometers shear and instability and moisture that this thing is going to track into the east-southeast along. And this is going to be a very impactful event, maybe one of the more impactful severe weather events of the season so far with this long-lived squall line. And let me show you this unusual upper level pattern that is leading to this event. And then I'm going to hit the road and start heading toward the west, northwest. Probably near the Hugo area, maybe down toward Paris. I do believe that there is just a little notch of some deeper moisture in there, and there is a chance that when that early cluster of supercells develops that there could even be an isolated tornado or two when it first happens. But this is kind of the split flow that I was talking about. You've got one branch of the jet off to the north. You've got this southern branch with a subtropical connection kind of over top of this anticyclone off to the west. You have cyclonic curvature in this branch as well. You have the core vortex dropping in to the central plains, and then you have this weird weakness in the flow in between them. So it's kind of a improper or incomplete phasing of these two branches, almost maintaining their separate identities. But then you have this little lead impulse here that ejects across eastern Oklahoma into western Arkansas, and I'm wondering if this could fire a pre-frontal band of a cluster of supercells across the Arklatex, southeastern Oklahoma, into far northeastern Texas. That's what I'm going to be monitoring first, and those will kind of lift off to the northeast, likely congeal, and then you get massive initiation as that front catches up with the dry line across eastern Oklahoma near evening. Rapid evolution into a squall line that's going to pass through southeastern Oklahoma into southern Arkansas, eventually into northeastern Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, and all the way down the line. But I did mention that there is kind of a diffuse 850 jet. This isn't your normal consolidated open wave that's ejecting where you get just a dry line, you get a low-level jet that's backed up right against the dry line. This unusual initiation, kind of incomplete phasing of these two separate branches is kind of leading to this unusual shape to the 850 low, kind of oblong, not that very well organized, and you do have some stronger low-level winds that are a bit spotty off to its east-southeast, and those are going to ramp up as you go through the day. This is at 21Z. So even at 4 p.m., you still have about a 30-knot low-level jet out here, and that is probably sufficient to generate even a little bit of an isolated tornado threat with that early cluster of supercells that could evolve through the Arklatex. It does look like a majority of the moisture is going to stay right along the Red River region down into northeastern Texas, and that's just waiting. That blob of instability upstream is just going to wait for this squall line to form. You can kind of see this egg-shaped 850 low here, a bit of a spotty low-level jet, but this is probably the best environment for a tornado potential with any of those renegade supercells that could form. The dry line, notice how that those 850 winds are a little bit weaker right up against the dry line, but there is a nice instability axis that builds through North Texas near the DFW Metroplex along the dry line. And even though the HRRR is not firing storms along that dry line, if a storm gets going within that environment, near and just to the west of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, even into southern Oklahoma, it is going to have the potential to produce some giant hail. Look at these cape profiles, very thick cape, steep lapse rates, a lot of cold air aloft associated with this pattern, and a lot of bulk shear too, with those at near 50 knot winds up at 500. Even though you do have that hole in the flow kind of between those two, you still have 40 knots at the mid-levels. That creates enough bulk shear to evacuate those hydrometeors from the updraft, get a mesocyclone, and get those very large hailstones, and even a threat of an isolated tornado with any storm that develops, even back there along the dry line. But then you get this little plume of moisture from northwestern Louisiana, far northeastern Texas, bubbling up into southeastern Oklahoma, and there is some higher terrain out there in southeastern Oklahoma too, some mountains that could aid in the formation of some renegade supercells there. That's at 22Z. And you can see the instability continues to increase along that dry line. And there's probably going to be initiation of even monster supercell storms down into central Texas along the I-35 corridor, Waco to Austin. Quite a bit of some extreme instability there along that dry line. Get a little bit of a hole in between. And then you have this pooled moisture coming up into northeastern Texas and the far southeastern Oklahoma. The HRRR is indicating a hole in the Cape there from a complex of storms that develops around 19Z and evolves into western Arkansas there near the Arklatex. That could lead to a little bit of a Cape hole across eastern Oklahoma into western Arkansas, which is why I'll probably target near the Red River for that prefrontal renegade storms. But here you can see the cold front starting to surge off to the southeast, and that's going to start to ignite linear convective modes across eastern Oklahoma. That's going to congeal into a massive squall line that's just going to feed down through this moisture and shear axis all the way through southern Arkansas, northeastern Louisiana, and eventually into central and southern Mississippi. But right along the dry line, you do have just some weaker low-level shear. Notice how that low-level jet doesn't quite make it all the way to the dry line, but you still get southwesterly winds at about 20 knots there, right along that dry line. Some marginal low-level shear, but it is possible that as those more isolated supercells in central Texas move off to the east, that this tail end of the low-level jet could increase just enough to even develop a tornado threat across the Texas piney woods as we go through evening as well. And then as we go through the overnight toward 2Z, notice how this low-level jet is beginning to increase ahead of this complex of storms that's now evolving at this time across southeastern Oklahoma. You're starting to get this low-level jet increase. And you definitely need deep layer wind shear, even low-level wind shear, especially in the lowest 3 kilometers to maintain these long-lived squall lines and to get some mesovortices embedded within them. Basically, you can maintain more vertical convection along the front edge of that squall line if you have strong shear in the ambient environment out ahead of it. If you have strong low-level shear, too, that squall line can force the individual updrafts to move more right than they otherwise would, just when you look at kind of the average flow that those updrafts are embedded within. And that can even enhance the storm relative helicity available for the individual updrafts within that line to develop those mesovortices and those tornadoes out ahead of it. But you can see that low-level jet starting to increase by 2Z out ahead of this feature, Louisiana into Arkansas, and that's going to continue to pump moisture northward, kind of maintaining that pipe of moisture in 0 to 3 kilometer shear for this squall line to move into. And by this time, the squall line is going to be closing in on the Arkansas border into northeastern Texas, building further south. You can see the low-level jet developing out ahead of it, setting the stage for a multi-state evolution of this derecho. Show it to you here on composite reflectivity. I mean, it is what it is. This is an early season derecho, an unusual event. Hello? So this is this mega squall line evolving into southwestern Arkansas. This is at 4Z, so we're talking about 11 p.m. by this time. Even some renegade blobs of convection here going up near the I-20 corridor into northeastern Louisiana out ahead of this monster convective complex that's evolving. Even this renegade down near Houston that develops off the dry line in central Texas near I-35 by 11 p.m. is still going all the way down near Galveston Bay. Oh, look at that big monster squall line that's forecast to evolve as that front is starting to surge off to the southeast. And it's a pretty multifaceted event too. You're going to have these prefrontal blobs at midnight forming, maybe even some renegades forming out ahead of that in central and southern Mississippi. And this is going to be the main front here, main event sliding off to the east-southeast. Widespread impacts of this. Big wind as well. This is at 8Z. Really accelerates. So you get this bulging, almost a bow echo there into northern Mississippi. This is going to leave some major wind back behind it. And this is going to be the major wind event across central Mississippi, eventually reaching the Alabama border. This is by 8Z here, continuing to push off to the east. Mega bow echo. It's gone through like 4 states by this time. And it's starting to approach Alabama by tomorrow morning. Early Saturday morning, you're going to see this massive squall line pushing off to the east. And that's why there's a slight risk for Saturday out ahead of this feature as well. This thing's just going to keep trucking off to the east. This is at 6 a.m. You can even see some renegades coming in with waterspout potential into the Florida Panhandle by this time at 12Z, 7 a.m. in the morning. Just a monster derecho going all the way, approaching the Georgia border now by this time. And this thing's just going to continue cruising off to the east, leaving behind a widespread swath of wind damage, embedded tornado vortices within that as well. Maybe by Saturday afternoon, the redevelopment of some supercell storms here, southern Georgia, up toward the upstate South Carolina. That's Saturday afternoon. Keep an eye on those as well. Supercells could even be threatening the Masters tournament by Saturday, late afternoon, with a threat of some severe weather. You're kind of on the tail end of the low-level jet, so the tornado threat is not going to be incredibly robust with this, but it is there. You can see an axis of that low-level jet there with 30-knot winds, a kilometer above the ground. So definitely evolution of a derecho is expected here. And look at some of the other models as well. Let's look at the wrap. New wrap model here, 13Z wrap. It's not the new one yet, but there's it. It shows this evolution of this early complex of storms ahead of that lead jet streak. And that could lead to a little bit of a cape hole up here across eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas. So that's why I'm going to target more of the Red River region with this event. You can already see that instability axis pumping off to the north. Cap starts to weaken already by about 19 or 20 Z, even to the east of that dry line. And I wonder there if central northern Oklahoma, with those storms erupting ahead of that cold front, you can kind of see that prefrontal boundary, almost a warm front there with those easterly winds. I do wonder if there could even be a couple early noodles across northern Oklahoma as well, as this dry line is starting to organize and push off to the east. Not a lot of, see what the wind shear looks like up in that mode as well. Not a lot of wind shear up there. Really the best wind shear evolves across far northeastern Texas into southeastern Oklahoma by late afternoon hours, kind of behind that little band there that develops. I'll probably head toward Paris, Texas, maybe up toward Hugo, Oklahoma initially, and assess the threat of some supercells developing in the open warm sector there, capable of some very large hail. But the threat for Dallas seems a bit more conditional. Even though you do have this massive dry line coming in, for some reason the convective allowing models just aren't pumping out precipitation there. I've seen some theories that it's under forecasting the evolution of the surface temperatures. You're really going to get mid-80s dew point or mid-80s temperatures out here along the dry line. So I still think there's going to be some monster hailers developing across North Texas into central southern Oklahoma here, with a nose of 3,000 Cape pumping into that area. Ardmore, Gainesville, definitely need to keep an eye out for some big hail, because you're talking 3,000 plus Cape, very steep lapse rates. You've got convergence along that dry line, so I wouldn't be surprised if that dry line ignites across southern Oklahoma into North Texas by mid to late afternoon as well, and then everything will congeal into that long-lived derecho multi-state wind event. You can see this warm front, this blob of moisture slowly drifting off to the north. I'm right now in northwestern Louisiana, and I see those low clouds streaming northward. Definitely rapid moisture advection underway to kind of set the stage for this multi-state evolution of this derecho event, with moisture surging off to the north, bubbling off to the north, and kind of creating this west-northwest to east-southeast oriented pipe of moisture instability and 0 to 3 kilometer shear. So that's really what we're looking at with this forecast. I'm definitely going to be activating full-blown chase mode, streaming live, multi-platform live stream, and hopefully I'll try to blow my windows out of Dominator 4 today, measure subsonic data ahead of these supercell storms. Even if there are non-tornadic supercell storms, we're still interested in the infrasound signature from those supercells. But thank you, everybody, for joining my weather reports. Stay safe throughout the moderate risk area. Just because this thing is more of a wind event, it can still be dangerous. You can get dangerous, damaging tornado-like winds within this line, in and around the moderate risk area. Even a chance of severe weather along where those surface easterlies are located. Probably will get some land spouts up there as well. I could see the dry line initiate southern Oklahoma into North Texas. More of a conditional threat, but any storm that does develop out there is going to have the potential of producing monster hail and even an isolated tornado. And then eventually the front catches everything, congeals into a line, and then that line is just going to rip down that moderate risk axis there. And a multi-state derecho event with wind damage along that entire line, all the way into Georgia eventually by Saturday. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to my live briefing. I'm going to hit the road. Never stop chasing.